So, uh, imagine handing the keys of a $1 million high-performance sports car,
Oh, boy.
right, to a 16-year-old who has, like, only ever ridden a bicycle.
That is a recipe for disaster.
Completely. I mean, they didn't build the engine. They didn't pay for the tires. They
Yeah.
have absolutely no concept of the raw, dangerous power sitting under the hood or, what it actually took to engineer it.
Right.
And that terrifying feeling you'd have watching them pull out of the driveway, that is exactly the emotional state of the prophet Moses as he delivers his final address.
Oh, I love that comparison.
Because he is handing the keys to a miraculous future over to a rising generation who, well, they never saw the sea part. They never felt the sting of a slave driver's whip. So how on earth do you make them understand the stakes?
Yeah, I mean, it really is the ultimate generational dilemma. You can dictate the rules to the next generation, sure. You can force them to, like, memorize the history, but actually passing down that absolute trembling awe of a miracle that they never even witnessed, that requires an entirely different strategy. It requires a complete psychological rewiring.
Which is exactly what we are deciphering today. Welcome to Come Follow Him. And for this deep dive, we have a really fascinating stack of sources in front of us.
You really do.
We are looking at study materials for the scriptural lesson, Beware lest thou forget the Lord. And that covers Moses' farewell address, spanning Deuteronomy chapters 6 through 8, 15, 18, 29 through 30, and 34.
It's a lot of ground.
It is. But alongside that ancient text, we also have production notes and lyrics for a modern music project. Because some brilliant songwriters managed to pull 29 specific King James Version phrases right out of this sermon.
Yo, 29.
29. And they turned them into a song called Don't Forget the Lord. But here's the kicker. They then recorded that exact same song in 4 completely different musical genres.
Which gives us such a unique lens for this deep dive, because we aren't just reading ancient history today, we're looking at how a 3,500-year-old warning about pride acts as like a modern spiritual checkup for your heart,
Yes.
and how the acoustic delivery of that warning actually changes your brain's receptivity to it.
Exactly. But to understand the music, I think we have to establish the physical reality of where these words were spoken, right? Let's start with the geography in Deuteronomy 34.
Good idea.
So Moses is standing on Mount Nebo. He is at the absolute end of his life, looking out over the culmination of a grueling 40-year journey through a really harsh, unforgiving wilderness.
Just exhausting.
Right. And he could literally see the promised land below, the land flowing with milk and honey. But he knows his journey stops here. He isn't crossing the River Jordan.
Which there is a deep poetic symmetry to that, His earthly ministry ignited on a mountain with a burning bush, and now it concludes on a mountain overlooking the destination.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to look at it.
But reading through the study materials for this lesson, you start to realize the supreme irony of the book of Deuteronomy.
How so?
Well, Moses has this captive audience on the brink of their greatest military and geographic conquest, right? Yet his final instructions contain almost zero tactical advice. I mean, he's not mapping out enemy strongholds.
Right, which feels like exactly what a general should be doing. If I'm about to lead 1 million people into hostile territory, I want supply lines. I want battle formations.
Exactly.
But instead, Moses gives them this massive theological sermon. It really makes me think that to Moses, the physical enemies across the river weren't the real threat at all. The real threat was internal.
Precisely. The preparation the Israelites needed wasn't martial. It was entirely inward. Moses understood that the physical promised land was merely a shadow. It was just a temporary staging ground.
Yeah.
The true objective was preparing them for the eternal promised land. And that requires learning to love God, obey him, and remain fiercely loyal. I mean, he is terrified of their spiritual condition.
And that maps perfectly back to the teenager with the sports car. The people standing in front of him are the youth. They didn't witness the plagues in Egypt. They didn't watch the Egyptian empire collapse under the weight of divine intervention.
Right, they were kids. Or not even born yet.
Exactly. They've only known the relatively steady, albeit strange, ecosystem of the wilderness.
And human nature dictates that without a visceral personal memory of God's deliverance, we just drift toward complacency.
We do.
Moses knows this. He lived with these people for 4 decades. He knows exactly how quickly their hearts wander. And that's the entire driving force behind his desperate central plea in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 12. Beware lest thou forget the Lord.
Beware lest thou forget the Lord. But, knowing that we are prone to forgetfulness and actually fixing the problem are two entirely different things.
Oh, for sure.
How do you take a 3,500-year-old sermon delivered in the dust of Mount Nebo and translate it into something that pierces the heart of someone, I don't know, commuting to a corporate job in the 21st century?
Well, you bypass the logical, argumentative part of the brain entirely. You weave it into song.
Yes, and this is where our modern source materials enter the picture. The lyrics to Don't Forget the Lord serve as this brilliant diagnostic tool. I mean, embedding 29 distinct King James Version phrases from Deuteronomy into a cohesive song is just an astonishing feat of artistic engineering.
It really is.
But it's the progression of the lyrics that I find so compelling. Like, verse 1 is entirely focused on the trauma of survival.
Yeah, the lyrics pull straight from Deuteronomy chapter 8, referencing the struggle. They talk about surviving on manna that their fathers never knew, which is from Deuteronomy 8, verse 3.
Right.
And drawing water from a rock of flint, which is Deuteronomy 8, verse 15. It grounds the listener in the raw reality of desperation. Because when you are in the desert, your survival is contingent on daily miraculous intervention.
But then verse 2 dramatically shifts the environment.
Mhm.
We move from the desert into the prosperous society of the Promised Land.
A very different vibe.
Completely. The lyrics warn. When you build your goodly houses and your gold is multiplied, don't say my hand has gotten me this wealth with swelling pride. And that's a direct synthesis of Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 12 through 17.
And that transition highlights the core paradox that Moses is really trying to expose.
Wait, I need to pause on this paradox because it feels so counterintuitive to everything society teaches us. We are conditioned to believe that poverty and suffering are the ultimate tests of faith, right? So is Moses really arguing that it is harder to remember God when you have goodly houses and a multiplied 401k than it is when you're literally starving in a desert? Shouldn't a comfortable life make us more deeply grateful?
I mean, it should, logically, but psychologically, prosperity is a much more insidious spiritual environment than starvation.
Really?
Yeah. Think about it. When you are starving, your dependence on a higher power is undeniable. You look up, the manna falls, you eat, you live. The cause and effect are binary. There is zero room for ego. But prosperity creates this potent illusion of self-sufficiency.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You put in the overtime, you swing the hammer to build the house, you invest the gold. The physical effort you exert masks the divine grace that gave you the strength to exert it in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly, that quiet, toxic little voice creeps into your subconscious. It's the exact phrase Moses warns about in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 17. My power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth.
My hand.
Yeah. The heart becomes inflated.
It's the swelling pride mentioned in the lyrics. You stop looking up at the sky for manna, and you start looking in the mirror, congratulating yourself for being the architect of your own salvation. You think you built the high-performance car all by yourself.
Which is a spiritual disease that leads straight to amnesia. You forget the Lord.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is Moses, being the ultimate lawgiver, he doesn't just diagnose the disease. He prescribes a very specific physical treatment for this swelling pride. And the songwriters masterfully wove it right into the pre-chorus. The antidote is found in Deuteronomy chapter 15.
Yes, Deuteronomy 15, verses 8 and 11. Moses commands the people to open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to thy needy. And if we look at the psychology of that, it's brilliant.
It really is.
If the disease is believing that your own hand got you all your wealth, the treatment is forcing that same hand to physically give the wealth away.
Exactly. It acts as a physical interruption to your narcissism. You cannot tightly clutch your gold and simultaneously open your hand wide to a brother in need.
You just can't.
No, it requires an intentional physical act of release, which rewires the brain to remember that everything you possess is ultimately on loan from God anyway.
It keeps the spiritual condition healthy by forcing the ego to step down.
Yeah.
I love that. But, knowing the diagnosis and the treatment doesn't guarantee the patient will actually take the medicine.
Yeah.
And this is where the source material gets utterly fascinating. Reading lyrics on a page is an intellectual exercise. But music, Music is a delivery mechanism for the soul.
Oh, absolutely.
The explainer document in our sources reveals that these exact same lyrics, with all those KJV phrases, were arranged in 4 vastly different musical genres.
It is a remarkable creative experiment in human psychology, honestly. The creators recognize that one acoustic environment doesn't resonate with everyone in every single season of life.
Right.
So they engineered 4 distinct sonic landscapes to spark self-reflection from totally different emotional angles.
Well, let's break down the mechanics of how these genres operate, starting with the version titled Manna on Nebo 1. The production notes describe this as an indie folk Americana anthem. We are talking acoustic guitar, mandolin, a plucky banjo, upright bass, and fiddle foot stomps.
It's very grounded.
Yeah. When I think about that instrumentation, it feels inherently warm and communal and makes you want to sit around a campfire.
And think about the acoustic mechanism of folk music. It is unplugged, it is raw, earthy, and totally unpretentious.
Wow.
So if a listener is currently in their own personal desert, if they are exhausted, feeling beaten down by life, and just scraping by on daily manna, a massive, overproduced stadium track might feel alienating.
Oh, for sure. It would just be too much.
Exactly. But a mandolin and a foot stomp? That feels like a friend putting an arm around your shoulder. It whispers the warning gently.
It creates a safe space to admit your vulnerability. I get that.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm not in the desert. Let's say I'm in my Ferrari. I've built the goodly houses, my gold is multiplied, and my ego is thick as a brick wall. A gentle banjo isn't going to pierce that armor.
No, it's going to bounce right off, which is exactly why they produced Nebo Das Promise 1.
Ah, yes. The notes describe this one as an epic, sweeping rock track in the style of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
It's huge sound.
Huge. It utilizes a contemporary male vocal ensemble that shifts from this dark, dramatic tension into a driving, triumphant battle cry.
Because if your heart is lifted up in swelling pride, you don't need a campfire, you need an earthquake.
Right.
The electric guitars and the aggressive, driving percussion of a rock anthem serve as a literal sonic battering ram. The genre physically interrupts complacency. It elevates the 3,500-year-old warning from a polite suggestion to an urgent life-or-death ultimatum.
That makes total sense.
Maybe.
The adrenaline response triggered by heavy rock music forces the listener to confront the gravity of the stakes Moses was talking about.
Exactly.
Then we have third approach, Nebo Flintwater 1. And this takes a hard pivot into a deeply sacred classical direction. It features a massive mixed classical choir with rich, complex harmonies. It builds very slowly, incorporating some modern, pulsing beats underneath.
Well, consider the acoustic environment of a cathedral, which is what choral music simulates.
Yeah.
When you hear 50 voices stacked in perfect resonant harmony, your brain naturally interprets that as something transcendent.
It gives you chills.
It does. It makes you feel small, but in a comforting way. It forces the listener to contemplate the divine majesty of God. So if the rock track shatters your ego, the classical choir humbles you by revealing the sheer scale of eternity.
It demands reverence.
Yeah.
And finally, the fourth version, Nebo's Promise 2, functions as a modern Christian pop worship anthem. It starts intimately as a soft ballad with a female lead vocal, and then it steadily builds until it explodes into a massive, unifying stadium chorus.
The psychology of the worship pop anthem is entirely about corporate unity.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, when the chorus swells and the drums kick in, it is literally designed to make thousands of people feel like one singular entity. It mirrors the exact situation of the Israelites standing together as an entire nation on the plains of Moab, collectively promising to remember the Lord.
Oh, wow.
It bridges the gap between individual private belief and communal public declaration.
So the lyrics remain the unchangeable anchor, the absolute ancient truth. But the musical genre acts as the customized vehicle that drives that truth past your specific psychological defenses. That is brilliant.
It really is.
And it perfectly sets up the most critical structural element of the song, which corresponds to the most critical theological element of the book of Deuteronomy.
You're referring to the musical bridge.
Exactly, because in songwriting, a bridge is designed to introduce a contrasting section that shifts the perspective before the final resolution.
Right.
In this song, the verses and the choruses are predominantly Moses' voice warning the people. But when the bridge hits, the perspective completely shifts into the divine first-person voice of God.
And the lyrics in the bridge declare, I will raise a prophet like unto thee from among your brethren, he will speak for me. I will circumcise your heart to love my name and put my words within the mouth of him who came.
That is pulling directly from Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 15 through 19. And this isn't just Moses talking about some future political leader. This is a direct, foundational, messianic prophecy.
It is arguably the most important prophecy in the entire text. God is explicitly telling Moses that another prophet, someone like unto thee, will be raised up to speak with absolute divine authority.
Yeah.
And the historical sources are adamant that this specific prophecy finds its ultimate and exclusive fulfillment in Jesus Christ.
The cross-references provided in the study materials are just staggering. I mean, this single prophecy from Deuteronomy 18 is cited across dispensations. Peter quotes in the New Testament book of Acts to prove Jesus is the Christ.
Right.
The prophet Nephi quotes in the Book of Mormon. The angel Moroni quotes it directly to Joseph Smith. And perhaps most powerfully, the Savior himself quotes it in 3 Nephi, confirming that he is the very prophet Moses was talking about.
If you look at the theological architecture here, you realize that Moses' entire life was designed to be a prototype pointing the listener to Christ.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, Moses was a deliverer, pulling his people out of physical slavery. He was a lawgiver. He was a mediator who stood between an imperfect people and a perfect God.
Yeah.
Every single one of those roles is a shadow, a physical, temporary rehearsal of the eternal deliverance Jesus Christ would ultimately secure for all of humanity.
Which brings a breathtaking new layer of meaning to the emotional hook of the song's chorus. The chorus repeats the lines, "The God who broke your chains, who brought you from the house of bondage and carried all your pains."
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the house of bondage is the literal historical reference to Egypt. But that final phrase, carried all your pains.
That is a deliberate foreshadowing of Isaiah chapter 53. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows.
Wow. So the songwriters are seamlessly linking the physical liberation orchestrated by Moses to the spiritual atonement accomplished by Christ.
Exactly. The 40 years in the desert, the daily manna, the water flowing from the rock of flint, none of it was just about keeping people alive.
It was an object lesson.
A massive, immersive, multi-generational object lesson pointing them directly to the Savior. Christ is the true manna. Christ is the living water. Christ is the one who ultimately breaks the chains of sin and death.
Which reframes Moses' final address entirely. He isn't just saying, remember the good things that happened to you. He is saying, remember the God who is coming to save you.
Exactly.
And that leads us perfectly to the climax of the sources, the final tag of the song, and Moses' ultimate desperate plea in Deuteronomy chapter 30.
Yes, Deuteronomy 30, verses 19 and 20.
Moses is standing on Mount Nebo looking at the rising generation, and he lays out the stakes with absolute clarity. He tells them he has set before them life and death, blessing and cursing, and his final directive is just staggering in its simplicity.
It really is. He says, therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live, that thou mayest love the Lord thy God, and that thou mayest obey his voice, and that thou mayest cleave unto him.
Choose life and cleave unto him. That is exactly how the song resolves. It distills Moses' ancient exhortation and the messianic promise of Christ into one single, unified call to action.
Because ultimately, this deep dive is a personal spiritual checkup for you, the listener.
Yeah.
I mean, the history is fascinating, the musical theory is compelling, but the text demands introspection. It asks you to examine the state of your own heart.
Absolutely.
When prosperity inevitably comes, when the goodly houses are built and the bank account is full, are you intentionally keeping your hand open wide to the poor? Or are you quietly letting pride swell in your chest? Are you remembering the God who carried your pains?
It brings us right back to the beginning. We all eventually find ourselves in the driver's seat of that high-performance car, cruising through life, enjoying blessings we didn't entirely build ourselves.
That's right.
The stakes really are a matter of life and death, blessing and cursing. So here's a final provocative question for you to ponder as you step back into your day. If the current state of your spiritual journey, your specific struggle to remember God over this past year, were set to music, which of these 4 genres is playing right now? Are you exhausted, surviving day to day, and in need of an intimate, foot-stomping folk song to remind you of your daily manna? Or is your ego inflated, requiring a massive, driving rock battle cry to shatter your complacency and wake you up?
It's a crucial diagnostic question.
And more importantly, no matter which genre is currently playing in the background of your life, when the music swells and that massive chorus finally hits, who are you letting sing the lead?